Hello and welcome to Hey, Not the Face with your host, John Nash, and your producer, me, Stephie Haynes. And today we have two big, huge topics for you. First, we have an official one championship contract, and we get to reveal it all, including the actual contract, which we will be linking so that you can read along with us as we go through this contract. And in our bonus section, we will have John talking about the confrontation between Dana White and Steven Espinosa. So first, we're going to check in with our fearless leader and find out how his week has been.
Spectacular. I mean, I think I drafted Christian McCaffrey for my fantasy league, so I'm set.
Oh,
I don't really pay attention to that.
How's the cat?
The cat is spectacular. She's just, it's her world. I'm just living in it.
That's basically all of us cat owners.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a vet. I'm trying to track down her original vet in the city. See if I can track that person down. But if I can't, I'll have to take her to a new vet. But that's my big mission for the week is find her a vet.
Aw, well, I'm sure you'll find a good one. So let's go ahead and jump into this one championship contract. And right off the bat, I have to know what exactly we have here, whose contract, how did we get it? Give us the full details.
The contract we have belongs to Adriano Moraes, one championship fighter who was actually sued. It was part of a lawsuit in Brazil where he was sued by the Brazilian managers Alex Davis and Samira Nadaf. Sorry about that. So mispronounced that name. But so that's where we got the contract. So I have actually other one championship contracts like other promotions, but because we got this through legal means and we don't have to worry about the person giving it to us did not, make us swear to keep it private. Because of that fact that we got it from a public source, we can reprint this. And so we're going to share it somewhere, I guess. We're going to have it somewhere you can download it and follow along.
All right. The very first thing that I notice is we have an official cover sheet here, and there are some mark-throughs, some line-throughs on dates. Can you explain those for us?
Well, the mark-through dates, it looks like what happened is they issued this contract. The title page basically says he's on the third bout of his current contract, and this is going to be the new contract that's going to replace that one, right? But if you look at it, the original date is February 4th, 2020. And the event is supposed to take place in April. Well, what happened in 2020? Mm-hmm. We had the pandemic came out and everything froze and one stopped putting on events. And so what it looks like is they offered them this contract. They basically froze the agreement and everything froze during the first year of the pandemic. And then they reissued it. They redelivered this contract to them with a spot from initialized. So it kicks in the next year.
Ah, okay. All right. So we have that all squared away and how we got the contract. So let's jump into the next part. What is different? What is the same about this contract and those of the UFC, Bellator, PFL?
Well, a lot of the very similar stuff in all those contracts. We've gone over all the other promotions contracts already. People probably are aware now that there's kind of a similar thing that the contract gives them the right to put on events involving the fighter. It makes the fighter exclusive to that promotion. It lays out details, what's expected of you, how many fights you're going to get, what you're going to get paid, the rights the promotion has, the right that the fighter has, defines the terms. All these things are the same in all these contracts. So it contains a lot of the same boilerplate material. In fact, if you look down that opening, if you go to the first page of the contract, the actual first page of the contract, which I think is third page of the document, you'll look and you start seeing it talks about whereas, what is the contract, then it goes under definitions, interpretations, and it's just, all the stuff to basically lay out the basic part of the contract, who it covers, what the clauses mean, all those things. And so in that sense, it's very similar. But what we're going to go through is we're going to kind of focus, since we've covered a lot of those details in the other ones, we're going to look at the spots that are kind of unique to one, what's eye-catching, and also what, maybe could might have be up for interpretation.
What is different about the promotional rights And what looks similar?
Well, if you look at it, the promotional rights, every contract has something about promotional rights where, what's the right that the promoter gets over the fighter. And you'll see that there's several sections under promotional rights. It's section 2 if you're following along. There's an A, which gives the right to the promotion to arrange, manage, and secure on behalf of the athlete a match. Every promotional contract has it. They're fighters. B is the right to publish, broadcast, disseminate the material. That is very similar in every contract, right? It's C that's different. And C is this contract promotional rights. Gives the promotion the worldwide right to manufacture, distribute, or sell goods and services depicted or decorated with the athlete's profile, including without limitation brochures, posters, toys, games, computer video games, electronic games, or other interactive software, novelties, and on and on and on. Basically, the merchandise right, which is incorporated with the promotional rights, which is a little unique to the other promotions because, like UFC will have these auxiliary rights, right? But they don't include it as part of your promotional rights. They don't. In fact, the promotional rights for like Bellator is they have the right to disseminate your image, right, to make posters and all that stuff. But this instantly gives them the right to your merchandise right. And what's also interesting, these auxiliary rights and merchandise rights granted in favor of the company shall, for the avoidance of doubt, survive the death of the athlete and shall be binding upon successors, heirs, and personal representatives. In other words, they're perpetual even beyond the death of the athlete.
So we are talking in perpetuity.
In perpetuity. When you sign up your rights with one here under this contract, and I've seen other contracts that are different and they cover different ground, but we're going to use this one as the template. When you sign into this contract, you are granting your rights, not just to fight for them, not just them have your image rights, and this is common. Usually the promotion controls your image rights for that fight forever, right? I'm in a fight, they recorded it, they can sell that fight forever. That's common, but here it gives them the right to use your image on fabrics, apparel, food, merchandise, anything they want forever afterwards.
But
go ahead.
If I may, that from that fight though, right? From promotional material, right?
Well,
it wouldn't be like anything that they do, one gets a piece of.
No,
I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
Yeah, I guess the one doesn't get a piece of whatever the fighter does himself, but they get the fighter's profile, right? Which means their image. They get to use the fight. They don't have to use it from the fight itself. So, like, I'm going to give you an example. UFC, they record your event. They own the right to that event, no matter what. Okay. And if they want to use an ad or do an ad with another fighter, they can't just put your image on posters or on T-shirts and sell the T-shirt rights without you signing that merch right agreement they have. But they can take your image, that fight image, and put it in a commercial and not pay you. But they can't make you be a spokesperson for that ad. But they can use the fight footage, but they also can use your image and put you on a poster at a 7-Eleven saying, please buy this brand.
Huh. Wow.
Because they own your image. They can put it on, they can make a toy with you, a bobblehead toy, and use that in perpetuity. So it's a pretty wide-ranging merchandise agreement that's in that. But the thing is, too, it doesn't make it exclusive because if you fight for one, they have these rights, they have the exclusive rights during your contract. But let's say you go somewhere else and you become a big star. Well, there's the problem is, one, they own your image rights. They could then start printing T-shirts up or toys and stuff and sell those alongside whatever new promotion you're with.
But only from the images they had rights to from certain fights, correct?
No. Again, the athlete's profile, your image itself.
So it is way, way different than the UFC.
Yes. It's much
that's
more expansive.
Wildly different. That's insane. Yeah. Why would anyone sign that?
Well, you want to fight, you want to get paid, and it's not so different from the other promotions, I guess, in the sense that a lot of fighters probably view it as not. One is because that the major money that fighters make is from fighting, not from sponsorship and promotional merchandise and stuff, right? So you're focused more on your fight contract. Two is the other contracts are similar enough that you probably don't view this, even though you grant a lot more of your rights away, as so far different than the other ones that it's it's worth fighting completely over. I honestly, all the contracts in MMA are terrible, but this one is kind of the worst on this front. If you go on to it, 2.2, the promotional rights, auxiliary rights, and merchandise rights, collectively referred to here as the commercial rights, are granted in favor of the company in perpetuity, as we just mentioned before, as regards to auxiliary rights and merchandise rights, and on a worldwide basis, free and clear of any claims by the athletes. So, or any persons claiming or purporting to claim through the athletes. So again, you could go to some other promotion, you could sign your rights away again later, but they own those rights. They get to keep those rights from you.
Wow. Do one fighters have any say at all in where they fight? And what is this part about requiring a new contract? Because that one threw me off.
Okay, well, just like all the other fighter contracts we've seen, that they have really no say in when, where, and who they fight. All that stuff is dictated by the promotion and the participation matches too. Just like the UFC, just like other promotions, if you are a preliminary or undercard match and a main or feature fight on that card is canceled, I think UFC is just the main event, not the co-mains, but here it's a featured fight besides the main event, is canceled or postponed, your contract, that you don't get paid, your fight is put on hold until they can book a new event, right? And that's similar to other promotions. But I just wanted to point that out because people always ask, it's a good example of how little control fighters kind of have over their career. Everything's dictated to them. And this also gets kind of harder for fighters, and for one, because most fighters aren't from Singapore. And so one, because they book fights out of most fighters' national territory where they're from, it makes it harder. You have to get visas and stuff. So there can be a lot of problems with getting a fight booked. If they moved it, it can freeze your contract a lot. So it's probably a little more noteworthy with one that they can do this. The athlete is required from time to time, this is kind of an interesting one, to execute or enter into separate contracts agreements to govern certain matches or events. And this is in one way you could read this as that the one can force contract extensions or side agreements or something on fighters. But really what I think this is detailing is the fact that one, because they do hold events in so many different countries, and those countries have certain guidelines and provisions that are required in the contracts, that you might be required to sign a temporary agreement that meets the requirements of that location, that country. But again, it's kind of, they don't come out clear out and say it, so it's a little vague. So it's not quite clear what they mean by you might have to sign a separate contract or agreement.
Let's go down to section 4, term. The first part of term seems similar to other contracts, but what about the champions clause and the duration of rights?
Okay, well, this is kind of interesting because on the terms of this agreement, well, first of all, we'll go the duration of the promotional rights. The first part, section 4.1, for people following along. The duration of the promotional rights is, and it tells you have to go to Schedule 1 to see how many fights that's for, but the contractual terms last for either the number of fights in the schedule later on, and if you skip further on down to the end of the contract where it's listed, it's for 4 fights or 24 months, whichever comes first. So he has to have a 4-fight contract for 24 months. So it's a little, usually for like the UFC, it'd be like 5 fights for 24 months because why the contract starts when you sign the contract or get your first bout, and then every 6 months after you might have another fight. So this is kind of a long contract, 24 months for a 4-fight agreement. That's a pretty long time in MMA terms to have a contract that long. The other thing now, the champions clause. This is pretty interesting because the one champions clause says, if you become the champion, the term of this agreement shall be automatically extended for the further period of 4 bouts and 24 months.
Wait, whoa.
So
the champions clause redoes the entire contract?
Well, what it does, yes, he has a 4-fight agreement. If he becomes a champion, it adds 4 bouts and 24 months to his agreement. So where other championship clause say 3 bouts and 12 months, this is an extra bout, an extra 12 months. And on top of that, it doesn't apply at the end of the contract if you're still the champ. It's just if you win it, suddenly your contract's been extended. In his case, his contract, so you could, this is kind of terrible for fighters because let's say in the second fight of this contract, you win the championship, right? Mm-hmm. Well, now you're at your most valuable. Even if you lose the next fight, no longer champion on your third fight, your profile's probably increased tremendously in your value because you used to be the champion. So your name value has gone up. But now instead of negotiating after that fourth fight, you have 4 more fights after that before you can get a new contract, or at least they could make you fight that out before you could fight out and try the market. So it really takes away a lot of leverage. In boxing, this probably, you'd see something like this in boxing where if you win the title, it extends the contract. But it's less of a problem in boxing because, and this gets complex, in boxing, the promotion doesn't own the title. And so there's a leverage the fighter has by being, because he owns the title himself, and he can hold that against the promoter, where in this case, the promotion owns the title, the promotion very well. Think of it this way. You win the championship, right? They extend your contract 4 fights. You do not want to fight and defend that title until they increase your contract. They strip you of the title. You still probably have those extensions. There's nothing that says they won't extend the contract still.
Wow. Tell me the reasons that they can extend the contract and how long they can extend it outside of the things you mentioned. Because I see stuff here, injuries, things like that. So give me the lowdown on that.
Well, one is the terms don't expire early due to death or incapacity, just like the old UFC contracts. The other interesting note too is the auxiliary rights and merchandise rights pursuant to the term, they continue right after the termination. So they note here in this that those rights continue after your contract's up. The other things they can do is they can extend the contract if you refuse to participate in an offered match. Other promotions have that. We've seen that basically before in all MMA. It's not like some boxing contracts have it that we have to offer you we have to make a fair offer, or we have to offer you a couple fights and then you get to choose which one you want. And this, like most MMA offers, they offer you a fight, you choose if they can extend the contract. They can, in this agreement, instead of the UFC 6 months, it's either the longer of getting you a new date or 120 days, which is only 4 months, but I mean, it really doesn't matter if it's the longer of the two, right? The athlete also, it says they can extend it. They have a thing if you're injured, just like the UFC and Bellator and one, they can do an injury. They can extend the contract for as long as your injury. If you refuse to take a fight, they can extend the contract. So there's basically all the provisions that the other ones have. And so there's also, what's interesting, these terms, there's no sunset that you've seen in the UFC recently. There's no official end date if you turn the fights down. There's no, UFC's gotten rid of this, but there's also no maximum number of declinations, which is declining fights. They can apparently keep extending the contract if you turn down fights.
Wow. Let's talk about the general obligations of the fighter, of the athlete. Go through that for us.
Well, this is, again, something you find in all of them. They're expected to, they have to give their best effort. They have to display sportsmanship. They have to not use drugs. Every promotion basically has something along these lines that dictates these. But what's kind of interesting about one championship, there is a part, if people are reading along, skip ahead to page 9. This is section 6. You go down to, I think it's G and H. The first one, they shall not issue any publicity relating to the services or commercial rights to be provided by him hereunder or participate in any interview or other publicity without the prior written consent of the company. And H, not without the consent of the company, change his name, including any stage names, professional names, in whole or part, or perform under any other name.
So if a female got married, she would need to go to one first.
It seems that way, yes. It's pretty far-reaching. It doesn't say anything specific about certain name changes. So if you wanted to change your name, you have to get consent from them. I haven't seen that in any other contract. There might be an issue about the legal contract being signed, that name change doesn't change the contract. But the publicity one's kind of interesting because basically it's saying that if you're going to talk about the commercial rights they have, basically the promotion and the rights they have to you and their fights and stuff, you need to get permission from them before you do any publicity. You can't go out on your own and book an interview.
I just cannot get over having to go to them to change your name. I mean, look at Michelle Waterson Gomez or Beck Rawlings, who is now Beck Rodriguez. I mean, that's insane to me. I can't.
I mean, we were looking at maybe because we don't have a woman's contract in front of us. Maybe in some of the women's they have an exception, but at the beginning of the contract it says this applies to men and women, and they're going to use he interchangeably with she. So I would imagine that this is the same for women as well.
Ugh. Tell me about this part.
But sorry, to keep going, there's another section too. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is kind of new too, and that's letter K. And that is, you cannot disparage.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Okay. You can't disparage, disrupt, damage, impair, or otherwise interfere with the business interest or reputation of the company or its affiliates, the one brand, or any current or proposed sponsor, advertising agency, network, or broadcaster. You cannot commission, publish, disseminate, or otherwise involve with any advertising or publicity material which may contain inaccurate, obscene, indecent, threatening, offensive, defamatory, torturous, or illegal languages or material, or which will infringe on any intellectual property of any third party. Now, Bellator, all of them have something similar to this about their sponsors, but they don't have it about this company and their business, right? So if this is a little stronger than them, then in fact, you can't disparage or make comments apparently about one or their networks and stuff, where in Bellator, UFC and stuff, it's limited. You can't say anything that damages the relationship with the sponsor. In other words, you can't do anything to interrupt their money, but it doesn't have a disparage comment. And we're going to come back to disparage in the future about how long lasting this is. But we'll wait till we get to another segment.
Okay. I want to go to segment 10, injury or retirement. Now, what happens if a fighter gets injured or retires?
Well, just like the other promotions, if you get injured or retired, they extend the contract. Here, they extend for a period for how long it takes to recover, or a period of 6 months, whichever is longer. This is the same as the UFC, right? Basically the same of all MMA promotions right now. The other thing is if you retire, it's either temporary or permanent. The company should have the right to suspend the term for the duration of the athlete's retirement. This is, again, the same as other promotions, except for the fact that UFC now has a sunset provision they put in for retirement. It's not as short as the 5 years, a little longer than that now, but when you add everything up. But this is forever. This is the old-fashioned UFC contract. If you retire, it freezes for as long as they want. You cannot leave this contract by not fighting.
What's the oddest thing that one can do to terminate a contract?
Well, if you jump to Section 11, I find this strange. There's a lot of things, they can terminate a contract just like the other promotions. If you lose a fight, they can terminate it. If you get your license revoked, if you get in trouble with athletic commissions, it's suspended, right? Refuse fights. All the promotions have that. For the UFC, for the most recent one I saw, that if you can turn down fights, but after the third fight you turn down, they can terminate the contract. But here it's the first fight. But this is the weird one. If you go to Section 11, 11.1c, if the athlete becomes involuntarily or involuntarily the subject of proceedings under any bankruptcy or insolvency law or other law or procedure of any jurisdiction for the relief of financial distressed debtors, and then D, if the athlete makes any voluntary arrangement with his creditors or becomes subject to an administrative order, they can be terminated. I have just never seen that in a contract.
Okay. If the athlete makes any voluntary arrangement with his creditors or becomes subject to an administration order. What?
I'm guessing it's that he becomes an agreement with his creditors that they get his paycheck or his purse.
So garnishment, wage garnishment.
It garnishes wages. They declare bankruptcy or something. If they go under bankruptcy, I just do not know why.
Well, because typically two entities are able to garnish your wages, and that's the IRS and student loans. That's when you default on your student loans, they can garnish your wages. When you default on your taxes, when you don't file your taxes, when you cheat your taxes, whatever. If you make an arrangement or an agreement or whatever, they can also garnish your wages there. I don't know any other entities that can do that. So this is insane.
Yeah, I just don't follow. I mean, maybe in Singapore there's other entities, like if you owe money to a bank, they can take it for other loans and stuff. I'm not sure. but I just hadn't seen that another one. And it's a weird thing that they can terminate you if you declare bankruptcy, because I mean, I don't know what the reasoning is behind it. I just don't know why that's a concern of theirs if their LLC independent contractor fighters end up having to declare bankruptcy.
Wow. I don't get it either. Let's talk about exclusive negotiating periods, rights to match. Do we have any of that here?
Yeah, just like the other promotions, they have a exclusive negotiating period. For this contract, it's 60 days after the end of the contract. So for 60 days, they have the right to be the exclusive negotiator, and they have a right to match that lasts 1 year because they're not an MMA, just an MMA only country. They also their option to match material terms for any mixed martial arts or kickboxing match, Muay Thai match, or any sort of martial arts competition. So it basically covers all those. So that's their, it's similar to everybody else, but that's something that comes up in the UFC antitrust lawsuit as a tolling provision. So it's worth noting here.
All right. I want to go to section 14 because confidentiality seems to be a big deal.
Yeah. As we mentioned earlier about the disparagement, we mentioned earlier about you can't, they need permission to interviews. Here it says section 14.1. The athlete shall be treated as confidentially not disclosed to any information which relates to the existence and provisions of this agreement and any agreement entered into pursuant to this agreement, the negotiations related to this agreement, and each of the companies and the company's affiliates' proprietary information. So we have confidentiality clause somewhat in the UFC and Bellator that you're not supposed to discuss the contract, but this lays it out a little stronger, I guess it's just stronger in the sense the language is slightly stronger, slightly clearer, and covers a wider range of stuff. So they really do not want you discussing this. What's interesting with the UFC, though, is they have that, but Dana White's basically said multiple times on record that fighters are free to talk about their contracts or money. And so that would overrule the contract. I don't think I've ever heard Chatri say that.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Yeah. And then if you go further down in that section, it says the athlete shall take all reasonable steps to minimize the risk of disclosure of confidential information by ensuring that only those of the athlete's affiliates whose duties will require them to possess any such information shall have access thereto, and that they shall be instructed to treat them as confidential. So they come out here clear cut and say that not only you're not supposed to disclose, but it's the fighter's responsibility to take the extra steps to not disclose to anybody but basically like their manager or an attorney. And again, one seems to be going a step above and beyond to make sure stuff is not disclosed about their contracts.
Let's go to section 22, continuing effect of agreement. We talked about part of the contract being in perpetuity. It seems like more of it is in perpetuity. Can you explain?
Yes. Well, the continuing effect of the agreement is the certain provisions, right? That the clauses of these nature are intended to continue past the termination of the term. So in other words, they last the end of your contract goes for 4 fights or 24 months, and it goes 4 fights or 24 months, and then it terminates. But the contract, a lot of the provisions extend, including, which is interesting, is that section 6 where you have disparagement, right? So you cannot disparage the company going forward. So the effects of the agreement are they continue to have your merchandise right, they continue to have perpetuity on those, but certain provisions like the disparagement and certain information, you have to honor those going forward in perpetuity because they survive the termination of the term.
Quick question.
Yes.
By what you just explained to me, let's say Ben Askren decides to talk shit about Chatri, whatever. Would that apply there?
Well, if he was under this agreement, yes, probably there would be some sort of he'd be violating the agreement. I don't know what they could do since he's in the U.S., but I know looking at older contracts are not quite the same. Certain provisions were much worse in older contracts for them. Especially for the low-level guys coming in, there's certain provisions that just seem like these contracts go on forever. But a lot of these rights issues, I think, have been added in more recent years. So I don't think he would have a lot of this stuff in his. But if, let's say it did, technically, theoretically, he could not talk shit about one. He couldn't reveal stuff about him because that would be in violation of that clause 6 would still be would still be going under this contract.
Wow. How about Section 32, governing law and jurisdiction? Because it looks like they might have an arbitration clause here.
Yeah, exactly. Well, first, the agreement is governed by, in accordance with the laws of Singapore. So you got to, if you have a lawsuit where, the UFC, famously, it's under Nevada law, you have to show up in Nevada to contest it. But here they also say you also are taking every complaint, every sort of disagreement with the company, you have to take it to arbitration, the arbitration rules of the Singapore International Arbitration Center. I imagine, considering Singapore is how well known it is to be pro-business, I got a feeling it's not going to be a very pro-worker type arbitration court. But you have to, instead of challenging them in court, you are required to go to arbitration first to settle any differences. And that sets up the same problem we have with the UFC arbitration clause, but this might even be a step worse for fighters because it takes place in Singapore. So not only do you have the Singapore court, which probably is more pro-corporate, I'm guessing, but you also have the expense of having to go to a Singapore court.
Benefits. I'm not hearing any. Are there any?
Well, if we go on, and the benefits I'm sure you're talking about are the benefits like the per diems and the room and board, stuff like that. If you go on, there's a section tagged on the end, and that is Schedule 1. And that schedule is the additional stuff that I guess applies to this individual fighter instead of all fighters that sign the contract. And if you look at it, you can see his prize win. He gets $100,000 to show, U.S. dollars, not Singapore, $100,000 to win. He also, it also says that this is where the number of matches are for, but he gets some benefits. Now, the way it's wrote into the schedule makes me assume that these sort of agreements this is extended on an individual fighter basis, that not every fighter gets this. Not like Bellator and the UFC where they have a generic, you get 2 flights, $60 a day or whatever. And this one, the fighter will receive 1 round trip economy class, and a cornerman will receive 1 round trip economy class, and they'll share a twin bedroom. So, and they'll get 40 Singapore dollars per diem for meals, right? Per day per person. Well, that's about $30 US. So about half what Bellator or the UFC pay per diem. I think actually Bellator might be up to $80 or something, but a lot less than them per diem. What's interesting too, this is a champions agreement, right? This is an agreement where he was fighting for the title and was going to be the champion. And yet there's no benefit bonus when holding the belt if he gets if he wins the championship. So like where other contracts will give you extra cornermen for title fights or being the champion, extra tickets in a room, that doesn't appear here. You don't get that with this. It's the same number. And also it's worth noting from their for events outside the athlete's home base city. So if you're fighting in your hometown, it seems like this implies that you will not get a room, not get tickets, and not get a per diem. And so maybe that's what they do with a lot of their shows. They book local people, and those people do not get tickets or flights.
Wow. Okay, I have to ask you about this because this stuck out to me. $40 Singapore dollars per day per person, or 3 daily meals provided by the organizer. This next part, whether the athlete receives the per diem or 3 daily meals is at the discretion of the organizer?
Yes, yeah.
So you might not even get it.
Well, yeah, yes. But the other thing too is if I guess like if they have a hotel that provides free meals or whatever, they're probably going to use that instead of giving you the per diem. The UFC actually has a similar clause. They instead of a per diem, they can also offer, I can't remember the exact wording, but if you're in a place where they can provide the meals for you, they don't have to offer you a per diem. But yeah, it's they get to choose if you want, which would suck if they're giving you terrible meals at a terrible hotel. If you're stuck taking those 3 per diem.
Which would suck as an athlete if you're stuck eating buffet food when you're cutting weight.
Yeah, that would be terrible. That'd be terrible. Listen, it's athletes are not important to the sport. They do not make the sport go. What makes it go are the acronyms, the letters that we come to watch. We do not. The fighters are not important at all.
All right, let's talk about 3 fights in a year and what one is responsible for and all that good shit.
Okay, well, this is the last part. We go down to the last page, or the second last. There's a signature page after this, but the last page of the schedule addendum to the contract. And people look here, you can see too that if he's the champion, he'll receive $250,000 US dollars, not the Singapore per diem money, US dollars. But this part really caught my eye. Beginning from the effective date until the expiration or pre-termination of the term, the company shall offer the athlete participant in 2 matches per consecutive 12-month period. So 2 things caught me about that. One is within a 12-month period, they have to offer you 2 fights, right? That's not the 3 fights a year that we're always told about in MMA, but that's a pretty long time. And I guess because they have 24 months, it's, a 24-month contract, that explains it. But think, they can offer you a fight and then wait 11 months before offering you the second fight. And if you can't take it because of the date, whatever, then they could extend the contract. So that really that's a long time to be waiting around for your fight, I imagine, in the fight business, right? That's a long time to go. Basically, you go a year between fights if they want to, right? And what's also interesting is beginning of the effective date. Well, if you look at the effective date, if you go back up at the top of the previous page, the effective date is July 8th, 2021. Well, this contract went out in January 2021, right? And so basically what they're saying is the contract went out in January. The start of this contract is either going to be on July 8th, or if it's executed, the execution by signed and maybe a fight taken after this date, that would be the start. But that means this contract is probably length of time is longer than 24 months. And then that's not counting the tolling provisions. So that seems like, I don't know, that does not seem like a good deal for the fighter there to have the contract start that way.
I am just flabbergasted by this. To close this section out, if you were to summarize this contract in one sentence, what would it be?
Well, in one sentence, not a very good contract.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, they're all MMA contracts are terrible. All various degrees of terribleness. UFC has certain stuff that's terrible. Bellator has stuff that's terrible. PFL has stuff terrible. The one thing I think that makes this particularly terrible is not that they can extend the fights longer. It's the perpetuity nature of the merchandise and also too, the contract does not include anything about merchandise rights, that you do not get a percentage of the sales.
Right.
So you hand over all those. And on top of that champions clause is particularly bad in the sport of MMA. That is much worse than what we see in the other promotions.
Indeed. All right, folks, that's going to wrap up our free portion. If you are a paid subscriber, stick around. We are going to dive right into the very salacious social media back and forth between Stephen Espinosa of Showtime Boxing and Dana White of the UFC. John, you have been in my ear a little bit this week about this back and forth with Stephen Espinosa and Dana White. Right off the top of your head, what is the most interesting thing about this?
Well, first I want to note I appreciate everybody that stuck around. They're not the cheapskates, the freewheelers, the freeloaders that come in to get this free content. We are here for you that are willing to put your dollars to your name and show up for this. So the most interesting part to me in this back and forth, the interesting part is how silly the conversation is, I think, partly. It's if people haven't been paying attention, Stephen Espinosa made a kind of a backhanded comment about the UFC by boasting that this is their third 20th million gate this year, and that the UFC, to talk about how impressive it is, the UFC has never done a 20 million gate. And that is 100% true. The UFC's never done a 20 million gate, while boxing's done several. But I guess one of the most interesting parts of it, I thought, was how Dana White came to the defense of the fighters and said, it's not you, Stephen Espinosa. It's not Showtime because they did these 20 million gates. It's because of the megastars that were on those events. It's because of Bud Crawford, Ryan Garcia, and I can't remember who he credited. Oh, and Canelo, which is interesting that he credited the 3 guys that came over to Showtime and PBC, not their regular guys.
I have to correct you on one little thing there.
Go ahead.
It wasn't Steven Espinosa that started that. It was actually Dana White. And what happened was he was at Contender Series. They asked him what he thought of the rumors that Showtime Boxing was closing down. And I thought he'd done a complete 180 because he said, oh, that's just too bad. You know, those are fine people over there running that show. And it's going to leave a crater in combat sports, something along those lines. And then he cracks a smile. He's like, y'all know I'm bullshitting, right? He goes, fuck that guy. Fuck that guy. He's a piece of shit. He's a scumbag. The word that came to mind was scumbag. He said he was a scumbag, this and that it couldn't have happened to a better promotion. You know, he went in first. Steven Espinosa replied. That was his response. So it wasn't actually Steven just out of the blue taking pot shots. It was Dana.
Oh, well, see, that would go. I never watched the Contender Series. I have no interest in that.
I don't either. I just happened to catch that video clip because what's his name? Jedi Goodman. Yeah. He tweeted out the video clip, so I happened to check it out. And that's how it all got started.
Well, I stand corrected. Look
no, it's all right because the way Dana responded was that was a chef's kiss right there because he shot himself in the foot and didn't even know it.
That's Dana. That goes. But what's interesting, I think about that, I love that he pointed out how the megastars are responsible, right? But you notice he gives credit to the boxing megastars, but they specifically in the lawsuit and a bunch of other places and interviews, it's always the UFC that does stuff, not the fighters. Even though you can kind of follow we can map out the events, what the revenue is. You can see a big difference when a Conor McGregor or a John Jones or a Ronda Rousey are event and someone else. So obviously the fighters have an impact, but the UFC is not quick to credit them. Part of the reason they don't want to credit them is because they don't want investors thinking they need these fighters. They also probably don't want to credit them because they're in the middle of a lawsuit where they claim that the fighters don't deserve a higher percentage of the wage share.
Ugh. All right. Why does boxing draw such big gates?
Well, that's actually an interesting question. I mean, it's hard to say for sure. One reason might be that the boxing fans are older, more established. You get these big whales, the gambling guys around the world that go and spend more. That could be a reason. And also because it's a more established sport, you get more celebrities. So it's kind of a celebrity thing. But I don't think that fully explains it. I think part of it is, and the UFC's been experimenting with this, they're not running as many events, right? And so they're contracting the number of events. And so they're making a higher demand for their events, and their gates have been going up. And we've seen gates going up a lot this year because they're restricting the demand, because UFC sells basically every UFC show is the same. So if you can give people an alternative, it weakens the value of those tickets. But for boxing, because there's so many shows and because boxing doesn't have a brand, it has the boxers themselves, big shows are the shows that people want to go to. And also because of boxing, the sanction organizations, the number of promotions, the UFC, there's no buildup to major fights. I mean, the biggest fights I can think of, like Conor McGregor versus Khabib, why was that a big fight? Because Conor left to fight Mayweather. Khabib won the title, and there was a delay to see them come back together, right? John Jones is now a much bigger draw because he left for a while. And if I would think Ngannou would be massive. Why? Because there's been this kind of this buildup because the two are identified as the two best heavyweights right now. We haven't seen them fight. In boxing, you have this buildup because the best guys like Spence and Crawford, they don't meet each other right when they rise to the high in the rankings. Like the UFC goes, you're the next guy, fight them. It takes a while, and then there's a buildup and an anticipation. I think that adds to the ticket. That's why I think boxing does such big gates. But UFC is catching up, and I think they're kind of learning to do that. Maybe not withhold the fight so long because that gives leverage to the fighters, but by creating scarcity by having limited amount of big fights or big events, limiting how many tickets are available. That way, if you want to see a show live, there's fewer events. You have to bid up the price.
Canelo versus Charlo, the ticket prices ran from $300 to $7,000. So I can see how they did a $20 million gate. The UFC for the John Jones Stipe Miocic fight, the lowest price ticket in the nosebleeds. I mean, I'm talking all the way in the nosebleeds. We're talking back row nosebleeds. $771, and the top end of the tickets is $15,898, I think. It's just under $16,000. So by that notion, I'm going to ask you, can the UFC draw a $20 million gate?
Well, I guess the question we have to ask, is the UFC drawing this gate, or is John Jones versus Miocic drawing the gate? Is it the mega stars on the event drawing the gate, or the UFC? I'm going to guess it might be the mega stars, the mega draws on it, that this big fight is, because they don't sell tickets for every event. Otherwise, they would sell tickets for that price at every event, wouldn't they?
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, I do think this UFC event, 295, John Jones versus the former heavyweight champion and considered basically the best UFC champion ever by maybe not at best at any moment, but the best for career-wise. Miocic is I think it'll set the gate record for the UFC, and it's going to do over 20. The prices are set for it to do well over $20 million gate. I don't know if it sells out, because that price, it might not sell out, but I think it does. I bet you if they break the record, a good chance they break the record, good chance they do over $20 million gate. I wonder if anybody in the media there will ask Dana White about his earlier comments, who to credit on this. The other question, if the fighters are to take credit for this, right? If it's Jones and Miocic, well, then the next question is, what percentage of those ticket sales have they have gotten?
Yeah. I guess I should rephrase my question to you. Can the UFC draw a gate that big organically without hyperinflating the ticket prices? That's my question. Let me ask you that way.
I guess I'd have to ask, what do you mean by hyperinflating the ticket prices?
Because the nosebleeds, $771, the highest ticket. This is not through scalpers either. These are legit ticket prices through Ticketmaster.
Yeah.
$771 for the last row nosebleeds, and the most expensive ticket is just under $16,000. By comparison, Canelo Charlo, cheapest ticket $300, most expensive $7,000.
Well,
so can the UFC do it organically?
Well, I guess I think this. I mean, the organic question is kind of hard to say, because this is, to me, organic is you're setting a price. If there's a demand and the fans are willing to pay this ridiculous price, this is not, again, like you said, this isn't scalpers. This isn't the secondary market.
Right,
this is the primary market. If there is such a demand that people are willing to pay that much for the nosebleeds,
mm-hmm.
well, that's the going price. And that would suggest, if that price is that high above Canelo, they might be shooting for a $30 million gate. Which would be incredible, which would just show which is going to be funny when everybody says, this just shows how much demand and how much interest is there in the UFC, and no one will bring up specifically that John Jones and Stipe Miocic is on this card. So organically, I guess that, to me, that is organically. You are setting a price and the fans are willing to pay for it. Now, what would be interesting is that they have to lower the prices. If they fail to sell the tickets at that price, then that will tell us something, that the demand's not that high. But I'm guessing they see that there's a super high demand for this fight. They set the prices as high as they could. This sounds like Canelo versus Triple G prices.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that was shooting for a $30-some million gate.
Right.
Didn't hit it, but it hit over $20 million. So it'll be interesting to see what the final amount is. But to me, this shows what the demand is for that fight.
So that's what you would consider organic. But would you consider those prices hyperinflated, though?
Well, they're hyperinflated in the sense that there's such demand that they can get fans to pay for this. And I think it's, it just shows what a special event, how much interest is in this event, that people are willing to pay that much for the car. I mean, an unnatural event would be something when they go to London for the first time, and then because it's such a big deal to be at a UFC event, people pay huge amounts.
Uh-huh.
And then they don't care about the fights anymore. But people seem to be going specifically, because New York, they play in New York every year, specifically for this fight card.
Okay. Now, will John Jones and Stipe make as much as the boxers on those events?
Yeah, again, if they're the ones that deserve the credit. See, it's interesting is you could say that Showtime's not giving credit to those fighters with Espinola's comments, but I'm sure Espinoza, if he wanted, he could fire back. We do give those fighters credit. We give them credit by we acknowledge that they're responsible, and we know that because we let them keep most of the revenue, right? Even though PBC is the promoter, the Showtime on some of the big fights, they're the one negotiating with Canelo. The pay-per-view money going directly to him and his promotional company. So they're like, yes, we pay, and I know that for those events, like John Jones and Stipe, they're going to make a lot for MMA fighters, right? But this event's going to generate as much as those big 3 pay-per-views in boxing did, and none of them are going to get as much as the guys in those cards did. Those 3 pay-per-view events that did $20 million this year in boxing, the combined total with those guys they made about probably 70% plus of the revenue went to the boxers, and the total amount is going to be like 180 million or more. The total amount those 3 boxing cards paid out to their boxers, just those 3 events, is going to be more than every UFC fighter combined makes this year. Most likely. Maybe there's a fluke but it'll be right around there. But I'm guessing a little bit more than every UFC fighter this year, just from those 3 events. So John Jones and Stipe, they're producing in a card. I'm going to guess, based on what I've heard, that the 2 of them together are not going to break 20 million. The 2 of them together might be around 15 to, let's say, 18 million if it does a well over $20 million gate, even though they get no cut of the gate. But let's say it does like 1 million buys on pay-per-view. They wouldn't even get that much. But they'd get, let's say, 15 million. That's what the lowest paid guy at those three main events that we just talked about made. That's what Charlo made, around 10 to 15 million. We know Ryan Garcia got over 30 million. Tank Davis made over 40, close to 50 million. Canelo's going to probably make over 50 million when all said and done. Both Crawford and Spence both got over 20 million. So the difference in pay is just enormous between those guys. So no, they will not make as much as the boxers on those events make.
Now, if boxing is doing so very well, why are all the rumors swirling around ShowBox? And the rumors are saying that ShowBox is going to shut down after its 2024 schedule. So if boxing is doing so well, what's the problem with Showtime Boxing?
Well, first, I don't know if it's going to shut down. It's very possible Showtime Boxing shuts down, but remember that Showtime's moving over to Paramount.
Right.
And I don't know for sure. Is the boxing department going to move to Paramount? Espinoza kind of made it suggest that that's what's going to happen, and they're going to continue. I could imagine that they do focus more on pay-per-views because it pays for themselves. But one of the differences in boxing is splintered. There's multiple promotions, multiple events. Boxing actually does well. When you add up the total revenue, boxing does about probably a little higher than MMA total revenue, right? The difference is there's no UFC in boxing. Mm-hmm. So UFC gets all the money in MMA. And because they have all the top fighters, they can put all these events on ESPN and draw in subscribers and charge a premium and get a premium. But boxing, you have DAZN, you have ESPN, and you have Showtime. All our premium channels require a payment, a subscription, right? So if you're splitting the audience, you're not getting as big an audience that UFC gets with ESPN Plus. You're getting a smaller audience. And for a lot of these promotions, because there's so much competition for the boxers and how much the amount the promotions want for these events, they can't put on the big fights on the subscription channel that will draw the subscribers because they can't afford the boxers, or they're not bringing in enough subscribers because there's 2 other alternatives that are drawing subscribers away from them because there's in competition. So it's not as profitable and lucrative to these subscription-based channels to probably have boxing as it is to have the UFC. But the difference, of course, is you're not paying these boxing promotions as much as you're paying the UFC. UFC is asking for basically what you're paying all 3 boxing networks are paying in their budgets for themselves alone. So it gives and take, but I'm guessing because they want to, if they do drop them, it's based on the fact that they cannot get the subscription-based fighting, not that their pay-per-views are doing gangbusters, but the subscription-based, that they cannot put on the fights, the big enough fights at the budget they have to draw subscribers, and that would be why they would be terminating it.
Why do investors, and this will be our last question, but why are investors constantly funneling money into MMA instead of into boxing?
Well, this, again, pretty interesting question, because on the surface, boxing, because you notice there's several successful boxing promotions, right? They've been around for years. would seem like the better bet than MMA, where there's only one successful promotion. But the problem is in boxing, because there's a competition, because they make small margins, no one wants to put money into promotions, really. They want this private equity, these private investors, they want to put money into like ONE and PFL, because they can imagine, they can be sold on the fact that we will be like the UFC and have these gigantic margins. People look at the UFC, the business model, where they make over $1 billion and their margins are, their EBITDA margins are over 50%, like 60%, just absurd numbers for the EBITDA margins, right? They look at that, we want that. And then you look over to boxing promotion, like we don't want 10%, we want this 50%. We want these massive returns. And so we're going to take a risk and put money into ONE and PFL in the hopes that they become kind of a junior UFC and we get those returns. But I guess I think they don't follow the sport enough, because the reason UFC makes that kind of return is for the very fact that there's no chance for another promotion to pop up, because they have control of the market. And so they're putting basically bad money into these other promotions in the hopes they can be a UFC junior, when the market's designed in such a way that there can't be a junior UFC, that the market share is always going to be with the UFC, because the UFC has a lockdown on the top fighters. They have market power. There's no denying it. It's a given. The only question is, do they attain it illegally or not? So, but they have market power. Where boxing promotions, a lot of competition, but because there's a lot of competition, there's very small margins for the promotions. But who's making a lot of money? The boxers, because there's a lot of competition. So the reason boxing promoters don't make a lot of money is because they have to pay boxers a lot of money. The reason MMA promotions don't make a lot of money outside the UFC is because the UFC has the whole market. The reason the UFC makes a lot of money is because they own the market and they don't have to pay the fighters a lot of money.
Ugh, vicious cycle. All right, folks, that's going to wrap us up for this week. We hope you have enjoyed the show. John, what do you got going on?
Oh, so much. I can't even remember so much. No, I got, If the Shoe Fits, I think I'll be on again this week with Alexi Old and Eugene Robinson. We have this Hey Not the Face. I am working on some articles for Bloody Elbow. I'm working on a book I've talked about before with Jacob Debitz. So I got to get some stuff done there so we can get that out as soon as possible. And beyond that, I got to take care of a cat.
That's the most important part right there.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
All I need to know is, am I going to get the first autographed copy of your book?
The first?
Aside from your mother.
Well, you will get one of the first. I don't know if it matters if I can sign my name or not.
Second,
at that point.
I want the second.
Oh, you will get. The autograph part's a hard part, because that means I have to get a book copy and mail it instead of just ordering it directly and sending it to you.
Yes, I'm going to need it autographed.
Oh my goodness! Does that have to be my autograph?
Yes, and a paw print of Isla too.
Oh my God, that's asking a lot. Oh, you will. Well, when it's done, you will be one. You will be the first, if not the first, the second, if not the second, the third person to get an autograph.
No third. I need it to be second, first or second.
Okay, you'll be one of the top two.
Yes, that's what I need. Oh. All right, folks, there you have it. Do me a favor, follow this guy on Twitter at Hey Not the Face. Send questions. We have an open mailbag. You can direct message either myself or John. I'm Crooklyn MMA. John is also available at Hey Not the Face at gmail.com if you prefer to email him directly. I am Crooklyn949 at gmail.com. We love your questions. Please send them. That's all we've got this week. So until next time, please stay safe.
It's not in the face! Thank you.